We've known each other quite a few years, you in a professional capacity. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I had more than 40 years in local journalism, and of those years, probably the happiest years in my job were the 6 years that I was the local reporter for Frinton and Walton. I say Frinton and Walton because that's how I say Frinton and Walton, but Walton was the prime news source of good news in those days.
Good news?
Yeah, yes. And when I first started, well, I was at the East Essex Gazette, as it was, as a reporter in the Chaplin office, and then they offered me the job as Walton and district reporter, and I jumped at it. And I hadn't got a car in those days, but immediately thought, right, I'll get a car. Must need a car, so I bought a Mini. At that time I lived in Thorpe, but as soon as I started my work here, and I loved the place, I thought I must get a flat. So I moved eventually to a flat on the Parade, where I had a commanding view of the sea. Later I moved to a flat above the Singing Kettle, where I had a commanding view of the High Street. So I felt I was at a number of things. But in those days, I mean, this is going back nearly 60 years, you quickly got to know the place, got to know the people, and reporters, unlike today, reporters are not, you don't see reporters because papers have reduced so much now because of the competition from website, etc. There's only 2 reporters left on the Gazette, but in those days there were 9, 10 reporters on our paper, and we had time to go out and talk to people and get news, so we had far more news. And I could walk down Walton High Street and know practically, after a year or so, I would know practically everybody I met, and that isn't the case today. But and that's how it was, and by calling on people regularly, you became known to them. It wasn't just the news that they might be able to give you that day. The fact that you were making an impression on them, if something did happen, they would phone you and let you know about it.
Oh, really? So
yeah.
Were there particular contacts that you would go to?
Yes. Well, first call was P.G. Oxley's, long established. They were very useful for getting the obits. Plus, Ron Brayley worked there as the office manager. He was a great contact because he knew all about sailing things. He was a member of Walton and Frinton Yacht Club. So that was a good call. In those days, nearly, anyone who died, they had the chance to have an obit in the paper because we would call on them personally and ask them, could we have details of your husband's life or whatever to do an obit, and people were generally pleased to see you. And in those days, the paper would probably have a whole page of funerals and obituaries, yeah. And also they'd have a whole page of weddings. Those things don't happen anymore. As I say, walking down the street, you would know so many people. People like Gordon Blease, who ran the shoe shop. He was a very useful contact because he was involved in so many things in the town. The town had more successful organisations in those days. Well, people were more socially minded in those days because they didn't have the distractions of computers and things like that. So organisations like Walton and Frinton Yacht Club, Frinton and Walton Rafa, they were very lively. They used to have something
Red
on.
Triangle?
Yeah. The Rafa used to have a monthly, almost monthly social through the winter at the Portobello Hotel, when that was a thriving concern. I've got very many happy memories of the Rafa nights. I used to have pajama parties and all sorts of things. But Walton was a very much more social place then. It's more or less an indigenous indigenous population, whereas now so many people have retired here and don't know quite so much about the places.
Can you give us any more of those events that that were organised? You mentioned the Rafa.
Yes.
What other stuff were fairly regular and
Yes,
newsworthy?
well, another thing was Walton Pier Bowl. They used to have a league every night, and they had the little bar, a little pub down there, which was a good place for people to meet. Our vicar, Kenneth Williams, he was a lovely bloke. He was really a man of the people, and although I used to call on him at the vicarage, he wasn't always there, but I'd always find him somewhere. He would be some night down at the Walton Pier Bowl in the bar there, having a drink with people, and other places in the town, like the Portobello. In fact, the Portobello was a good, after I called on P.G. Oxley, I had other calls to make in the High Street, and eventually I'd land back at the port at about 11 o'clock in the morning, where people would gather because they knew not just me, but Ken Adams was all a freelance journalist. We used to meet there every Tuesday morning, 11 o'clock, and so people knew where to see us and exchange news. And Bob Oxley himself was nearly always there at 11 o'clock, unless he'd got some funeral or other. Coast Guard district officer, in the days when Walton had a really big team of Coast Guards, as well as a station officer and 5 Coast Guards, you had the district officer who commanded the whole of the Thames Estuary. So he was a good news contact. Yes, and yes, social life generally was much better. Well, I think it was better then than now.
More cohesive.
Yeah, yes.
Town.
Oh, yes, people did go out more and enjoy themselves together, which was good.
Well, I guess we've all changed habits since COVID as well. I don't think people go out as much as they used to.
No. Well, it's actually been a decline. I mean, I noticed the difference, now between my own youth and then my children's youth and now my grandchildren's. And in my time, we were out a lot more than they are now. But that's just one of those things. But Walton was a lovely place to live and work in the 60s, 70s. And as I say, Walton Pier Bowl was thriving. In fact, that was one of my regular calls. And on one of the calls made a very big, significant difference to my life. I got there on a Tuesday morning, and the PR person used to meet me, and often there wouldn't be much to give us, just the results. He said, we just had the annual championships, and an unknown young woman won the women's championship. I said, that's a good story, and he gave me all the details. Maureen Brown, so-and-so, she won it, and had the surprise of all the old regulars. Anyway, I got all the details, and just as I was going out, he said, hang on, Mike, that Maureen Brown's just coming in. Do you want to have a word with her? I said, well, yeah, of course. So I had a little interview, and report went in the paper that week. And obviously she had made a bit of an impression on me, and with my report I might have made an impression on her. We met again a week later at some party, and it all started from there really. So Walton Pier Bowl was responsible for my happy married life, which we've been married 53 years.
Wow.
So, that's the sort of thing that used to happen in those days. Yeah.
Well, that's significant, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you go around the pubs? Were they?
Yes, as I say, the Portobello was a good place for exchanging news. Queen's Head was another one. There was a chap called Brian Downs who used to run it, and not only did he run the pub, he used to get involved in Walton community life, and he became chairman of the carnival. If only we had someone like that nowadays, the carnival would still be going strong. But things now.
Yeah, well, times change, as you say.
Yeah, yes. But it was a good day, a good time to be a local journalist, whereas now, as I say, they're stuck in their offices or even at home. There's not an office now at Walton for the paper, and so they work from home, so they don't get out, and therefore you don't get the same news in the paper that you used to. For instance, when I was editor, this is one of the papers I produced, front page. You can see the amount of news on the front page, and that's a 72-page paper, and inside every page was stacked with local news. Now, it's a much smaller paper. You don't get any front page news. It's just the puffs of what might be inside. And inside, I'm afraid there's not so much news that you used to get in the old paper.
Does that mean nothing's happening here?
No, well, that's part of it, I think, but the other part is that the reporters don't get out, they can't get out, and they don't, unless stuff is sent into them. There's no news gathering process now, so news has to be sent into them, and it's no good sending it on a bit of paper or anything, it has to be emailed.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
So what might they be missing that you would have collected?
A lot of news about people, I think, mainly. That's what's missing these days. People's achievements. And now they're, just going for news and court cases, perhaps council news. But people's achievements, we used to, but you're always interviewing people about what their young people achieve things.
Like the Sea Cadets?
Yeah, the Sea Cadets, indeed. They were always in the paper. But do you see it in the paper now? No. And people's promotions at work. And, I always remember the two girls in Barclays Bank at Walton who both celebrated their 21st birthdays in the same week. That sort of thing doesn't appear in the paper anymore. Because, as I say, the reporters don't get round, and unless it's sent into them, and even then, on behalf of the organisations that I'm involved in, like the Rotary and Teacher Association, I will send things in sometimes, and they're just, if they've already filled out a paper, they don't stand a chance of getting in.